What's going on, everybody? My name is Mark. You're watching The Big Critique. Thanks so much for tuning in to whoever's actually tuning in right now. Much appreciated. I know it is the middle of the day on a Monday. For those of you who have the option to stay home and celebrate, like myself, happy Veterans Day. Much appreciation to all of our forces who served and allowed us the freedoms to do the things that we do every day of the week. It does not go unappreciated. Moving forward. So, the title of this episode of my podcast is The Future of Our Civilization, and if you look at the thumbnail that I've posted, it's what is civilization design, or the future of our civilization design. I think that's what I named it. Anyway, okay. So yesterday I posted about user experience design and how it should be looked at, not just when creating an online or digital presence or platform, but anything like that. And I think that based on the topics of conversation that arose from my post yesterday, it kind of gave me the idea to talk about something way higher level, or just a much different way of thinking than we think right now in our civilization. This is going to be a quick one, as I have another podcast to get to very, very shortly. So this is just a thought that I wanted to get out onto the internet, and whoever can benefit from it. Who knows? So, as I said before, user experience design, we think of it as something that's to make a product or a service. But I then thought about it yesterday while I was driving in a whole different way. You see, the way that I think about life now, I definitely did not always think of life like this, is it's an entire experience. Literally everything you do every day is an experience that you, as the user of your life, are going through, right? So you can apply user experience design to your entire life. Most people just will never think of it like that, which is fine, which is why I wanted to get this thought across today. So a lot of people today will talk about how shitty things are, how terrible the world has gotten, blah, blah, blah. The world has gotten to be a bad place, or has it gotten to be a fantastic place that we are all so well connected in that you hear a lot more. Like, all of the terrible shit is now magnified as much as the good shit is. Therefore, it just seems as if things are getting so very bad today. It could be, I don't know. Anyway, we live in a world where it's now a thing to disrupt the normal, which is fantastic. Because this is what I want to talk about, disrupting the normal, right? You hear a lot of entrepreneurs or people that are in the spotlight that we give them, so to speak, about how, maybe the formal education system didn't really suffice for them. Maybe it didn't really help them to get to where they are today. And then a thought came into my mind. And maybe you've heard this before from other people, but I'll execute my thought on it. I think that we need to, first of all, we definitely need to apply user experience design to every little thing that's done to allow ourselves the best living experience possible, I think. But how do we start to do that? Well, the best way to start to do that is to educate people. And the best way to educate people is obviously through education. So what do I mean? Where am I going with this? I think that we need to look at modern day education, and yes, I'm talking about pre-K, elementary school, junior high school, college, all this shit from a way different perspective. Now, this may be very ignorant of me. I don't know, because I'm not in the planning process and curriculums and stuff like that. What I know is what I hear. I hear things like Common Core, which I'm not going to get into because I'm really not educated on that stuff at all. But what I will say is this. I wonder what would happen if we treated our education system more like a business. Now, I don't necessarily mean that in the for-profit way. This is the way that I mean that. I mean that in the sense of when you run a business, when a CEO runs his own company, right? And I have many friends that are CEOs, and this seems to be the common denominator between all of them and the way they like to run their businesses, and that is you empower your employees. You give your employees, the people that you're paying to do work for you, the power to think for themselves, the power to make moves, and and try to help you and grow your company and break boundaries. And so essentially, as a CEO of your company, you work for the people you hired, to try to give them whatever resources or to guide them in whichever way possible for the best experience that they can have. That's what I understand about how a number of my friends who own their own businesses run their operation, and it seems like a good idea. So in order to do that, they've got to sit with their employees and in the UX design process, you call this discovery. You talk to the end user or the people that will be utilizing your product, and you see what ways and how they actually use it and all that stuff, right? So now, I don't want to say there's a discovery process with your employees, but there might be. I don't know. I guess every CEO is different. I think that there needs to be more of what's called a discovery process, or just like a general, we need to understand how the next generation, how these kids in school are learning and what they actually really want to learn, instead of just, I don't want to call it arbitrarily or ambiguously or whatever sort of phrase you want to use. We're shoving information down their throat, right? And I don't want to call it a bad thing, because I'm sure there's science and other studies that have shown that there's a reason that education stands the way that it stands. What I think could be a good idea, and again, there's a ton of variables in this, so I'm no authority figure on this. This is just an idea that I'm passing along. What could be a good idea, or at the least an interesting one, is to gather students, gather kids, gather parents, put their kids in a room with them so that everybody has these open lines of communication, give them an open forum, and really understand what they want to learn, what interests them. Now, kids may not really want to learn anything at a young age. I don't know. But a lot of kids could be very eager to learn specific things. And again, maybe this goes on in different classrooms. I'm not sure. But I think that we need to make it part of a general curriculum where we cater to more of how we understand our kids are going, our next generations. I don't have kids, but the next generation is going to operate. Realistically speaking, going to operate. So it's I'm not saying we should rip things like the Holocaust out of our curriculum. We should not rip things out like the Holocaust out of our curriculum, because if you do something like that, that's how people forget, and that's how history repeats itself. We should not do that at all. I'm simply saying we should evaluate our curriculum and how much time we spend on each thing, and see if there's ways, which there's usually ways, to incorporate things that might actually benefit our youth. Really truly benefit them in a way for the future. For example, I see a lot of people posting that we need to bring home economics back into the classroom. Definitely should. Here's the issues that I have found with going to public school and high school and all that. It does not prepare you for the work world. It does not prepare you to get practical stuff done. And a lot of people tend to use it as a crutch. I've seen so many people in their lives. No, that's a generalization I don't want to make, actually. I'm going to retract that. I've seen people before use school as a learning crutch. I'm in school right now and blah, blah, blah. And no, it's not just one person for the person that thinks that I'm talking about them. It's a lot of people. A lot of people will use school as a crutch for everything that they do. I'm in school right now or whatever, and they're in school for 10 years trying to make things happen for themselves. My very, very humble piece of advice to anybody that's finishing high school is I think that everybody should, if not take a year off, because maybe you don't want to take a year off, maybe all you know is school, and that's great. Everybody's different. I know entrepreneurship is a big buzzword in today's society, with guys like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone and all these people preaching it. It's not for everybody. It's far from everybody. As a matter of fact, it's for a very minute amount of the population can live with that sort of a mindset. It's not easy, Not to say that I'm a successful one and all, but I'm versed enough in how these things work to understand that none of this shit's easy, right? Anyway, the point is, I've gone too far in different directions. The point is, we need to treat everything like a user experience, and we need to understand who our users are. And yes, that 100% relates to the education system. It relates to every system. And it's the generation I grew up with, I'm 33. In our generation, things were the way they were because the government and the authority said that they needed to be this way. we need this to be this way. This is just the way that it works. There was no disruption 15 years ago. There was none of this. Or if it was, it wasn't blown up the way that it is today because of the internet and how easily we have access to all this information. I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and if you don't know who he is, tune into him. He's the number one podcast in the world right now. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, right? And the reason I bring him up is because in my social circles, at least, there's a ton of times where people will just have conversations about the government and how people think it's going to fall down and blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I'm just like, I wonder what the celebrity in crowd, or more towards like the 1%ers, would have to say about this, because it's like, you would think that those people, because of the information and the other like incredibly well accomplished and educated people they have access to, right? I wonder what they have to say about it, because whenever people get into politics and all that stuff, right? In my head, I'm just like, I don't want to really say anything. We don't need a president, and this president sucks, this president doesn't suck. I can't say that because I'm not in this shit. I'm not in Capitol Hill. I don't understand the way this works. Like, on a day-to-day, the realities of it level, everybody sees what the media wants them to see from the news, and that's all well and good. But by the same token, it's just like anything else, right? Like, I'm not going to make an assumption on how the CEO of Apple makes their shit, does their shit, because while I may like or dislike the price that they put on an iPhone or, a MacBook Pro, there may be other reasons why things are the way they are. And you just don't know. You can make assumptions, sure, but I just don't know. And I've learned enough in my life to understand that there's just so much shit that you don't even know that you don't know, right? And I went off on that tangent to give you all these examples, to backtrack to something I was watching on Joe Rogan. Again, I'll come back to what I was thinking about the government, which is like a lot of people say that the government is crap and blah, blah, blah. So I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Roseanne Barr, right? And essentially they were both talking about how they felt about the government, about how they felt that changes need to be made in all this. I'm not going to go directly into the conversation because I don't remember it verbatim, but what I will say is, if a man like Joe Rogan, and this is a man who has networked himself with people that I think Joe Rogan is incredibly open-minded and incredibly smart, and especially the fact that he has socially networked and versed himself with these incredibly intelligent individuals who are highly accomplished and have made great moves and factually have conquered these things. And for him to say and do things like the way he said about government, it just makes me think wow, my assumption of people that are more so in the in crowd and the 1%, and they have a lot of the same thoughts that you and me have. That shows a lot. That's just fuck, no, we're not so different. They just happen to have worked harder and longer, and I don't want to call it luck. They got into the spotlight, and are to some degree some sort of an almost authoritative figure. But essentially that's the thought that I wanted to get across from that. It's essentially it's not just us that thinks that we need to reconsider anymore. It's not just a little guy. It's everybody. Everybody understands that we are living in a world. The government was one example, right? We're living in a world where now we can really, really, truly disrupt shit and change shit, As much as we all think there are government, there are higher figures, the government's a higher figure and all this. And it is. They dictate the laws and all that stuff. But that's not to say that little by little we can't really start to change things. And to change things, I think that our education system should probably be the first thing to really truly see ridiculous change. I don't think that curriculum needs to get dictated to our youth in such a specific format anymore. I think that our next generation should have some input on the information that they're going to learn, because you know what, not for nothing, these kids, a lot of people may look and be they're just a kid, what do they know? But they're the ones that are on the new apps, that are on the new platforms, that are finding creative and new lucrative ways to make money. I'm very new to the YouTube game. There are kids that are way younger than me that are making millions because they just found out, they realized that this was a thing first, a lot of people don't want to think about it like this, but our kids are indefinitely, they're absorbing information at a rate way faster than we are because we work every day with a lot of the same information. But when they go to school and they learn different shit, they're probably a lot smarter, as in like, are you smarter than a 5th grader, than we are. So we should listen to what they have to say and incorporate at least some, or meet them in some sort of a halfway ground of what they actually are interested to learn. And I feel like if we start to do this, the dropout rate will be a lot less. If we start to incorporate ways of, maybe putting how to learn to be an entrepreneur in the classroom, or how to learn to be a good salesman in the classroom. A lot of people don't realize how important things like that are in this day and age. To be a good salesman, to understand how to provide a good customer experience or good consumer experience. These things are vital, and they're not taught in the classroom. They're just not. Anyway, I've gone for a little bit longer than I've wanted to. I'm going to hit you guys with a guest very, very shortly. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Much love to everybody. See you soon. Bye.